I never thought love could ruin my life, but it did. I was only a student, young, naive, and full of dreams. He was my teacher, respected, admired, and trusted by everyone. What began as guidance slowly turned into stolen glances, secret conversations, and hidden promises. At first, it felt magical, like a forbidden fairy tale coming true. But soon, the same love that made me feel alive became the chain that destroyed everything. School corridors were always buzzing with noise. The sound of footsteps rushing, books slamming, laughter echoing between lockers. But in the middle of all that chaos, I felt strangely invisible. I was just another 17-year-old girl, with long brown hair always tied up in a ponytail, notebooks pressed against my chest, and a heart that secretly longed for something more. Something beyond grades, exams, and teenage crushes. My life was simple, predictable. Wake up at 6, catch the bus at 7, classes until 2, part-time job at the library, and then home to help my mother with dinner. My family was close-knit. Mom was gentle and hardworking. Dad was strict but fair, and my younger brother always made fun of me for being too serious about school. They wanted me to be focused, disciplined, and ready for college. And I was, or at least I tried to be, until he entered my life. Mr. Carter, my English teacher. Tall, confident, always wearing crisp shirts with sleeves rolled just enough to reveal strong forearms. The kind of man whose presence filled the entire classroom the moment he walked in. He wasn't like the other teachers. He didn't just lecture. He spoke like every word carried weight, as if books weren't just words on paper, but keys to a bigger world. When he recited poetry, his voice made the classroom fall silent, and sometimes it made my heart beat faster than I could control. At first, I told myself it was admiration. That's all. Admiration for a brilliant teacher who cared about his students. But somewhere between the lessons and the after-class questions, admiration quietly turned into something else. One afternoon, I stayed behind after class. The rest of the students left, the door closed, and it was just me and him. I nervously asked about an essay topic, and he leaned closer, his eyes sharp but kind. He said softly, "You have a gift. Your words carry emotion. Don't ever stop writing." No one had ever spoken to me like that before. It wasn't just about grades or school. It was about me, my voice, my soul. And in that moment, I felt seen, truly seen. After that day, I found excuses to stay longer, helping him carry books, asking for feedback, even pretending I didn't understand something just to keep the conversation going. The bond felt innocent, pure, at least in the beginning. But little by little, I started noticing the way his eyes lingered, the way he paused when our hands brushed as he handed back my papers, the way silence between us wasn't awkward, but heavy, charged. Still, I told myself it was nothing, just imagination, just silly teenage thoughts. He was a teacher, he was married, he had responsibilities. And me? I was just a girl with notebooks and dreams. But destiny has a cruel way of testing boundaries. It was during a school event, the annual poetry reading. I had written a piece, but I was too nervous to read it aloud. Mr. Carter found me backstage, trembling, clutching my paper. He placed his hand gently on my shoulder and whispered, "Breathe, you're stronger than you think. I believe in you." Those words lit a fire in me. I walked onto the stage, read my poem, and for the first time in my life, I felt powerful, confident, alive. The applause was loud. My classmates cheered, but my eyes only searched for him. And there he was, at the back of the hall, clapping slowly, smiling at me, as if the whole room had disappeared. That smile stayed with me all night. It followed me home, it followed me to bed. And as I closed my eyes, I realized something dangerous. I wasn't just grateful for his support. I was falling for him. I didn't want to admit it, didn't want to give power to the truth. But every glance, every word, every shared silence made it harder to deny. And yet, beneath all the excitement, there was a shadow, a voice in the back of my mind whispering, "This is wrong. This could destroy everything." I ignored it because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone truly understood me, and I wasn't ready to let that go. But deep down, I knew something was about to change. Something was about to break. The days after the poetry reading felt different. I walked through the halls with a quiet confidence. My classmates noticed it, my teachers noticed it, but more than anything, he noticed it. Mr. Carter would look at me longer during class. Sometimes his gaze would linger just a second too much. And when our eyes met, my stomach would twist, as if a secret was silently passing between us. One afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, scribbling notes before class began. He walked past me, paused, and said quietly, "That poem, it was more than just words, it was you." Then, he kept walking as if he hadn't just unraveled my entire world with one sentence. Those little moments grew heavier. A glance, a half smile, a nod in my direction. They weren't ordinary anymore, they carried meaning, hidden meaning. At home, life was as usual. Mom called me to set the dinner table. Dad asked about my homework. My brother teased me about the teacher's pet jokes he heard from his friends. I laughed it off. But inside, I was protecting a secret that I didn't fully understand myself. I started writing more. Poems, essays, thoughts I couldn't say out loud. And often, I shared them with Mr. Carter. He encouraged me, told me my writing had power. Sometimes he even said, "You're going to change lives with your words one day." No boy my age ever said things like that. They noticed my hair, my clothes, my face. But he noticed me, my mind, my heart, my voice. And that made him different. Too different. But not everyone saw him the way I did. Some of my classmates whispered behind his back. They said he was too strict, too intense. Some even joked that he favored me too much, giving me higher grades, more attention. At first, I brushed it off, but then I started noticing it too. Whenever I raised my hand, he always called on me first. Whenever he graded my papers, he left long, thoughtful notes that no one else seemed to get. Whenever I walked past him in the hall, there was always a slight pause before he moved on. It was innocent, wasn't it? I told myself again and again. But the line between innocent and dangerous was getting thinner every day. One Friday evening, the school organized a teacher-student debate event. I was part of it, representing the student side. The audience laughed, clapped, cheered, but my eyes kept searching for his approval. When the event ended, I found him near the staff lounge. He smiled at me and said, "You are brilliant. I almost forgot you were my student up there." The way he said my student, it didn't feel like a boundary, it felt like a confession. I froze, my heart racing, but then another teacher walked by, and just like that, the moment disappeared. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop replaying his words. "I almost forgot you were my student." What did he mean? Was it just encouragement? Or was it something more? The next week, something shifted even more. We were in class, students buzzing with noise, and suddenly Mr. Carter snapped. "Quiet." "Enough," he shouted, his voice sharp. Everyone froze, even me. I had never seen him lose control like that. After class, I stayed behind, worried. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He sighed, rubbed his forehead, and said, "Some days it feels like no one is listening, no one cares." Then he looked at me and added, "Except you." My heart stopped. I shouldn't have felt special, but I did. I shouldn't have felt chosen, but I did. That evening, at dinner, my father spoke about responsibility, about how I needed to stay focused on my college applications. I nodded quietly, but my mind was somewhere else, with words that weren't supposed to matter this much. "Except you." From that moment, it was no longer just admiration. It was a secret thread pulling us closer, tighter. And though I tried to resist, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I was falling, and deep down, I sensed that if I kept falling, there would be no way back. Something was shifting slowly, dangerously. And even though I couldn't see it clearly yet, I knew something was about to break. The weeks rolled by. Autumn leaves scattered across the schoolyard. The air was crisp, but inside me, everything felt too warm, too alive. Every class with him became heavier, not because of the lessons, but because of the silence between the words, the pauses that felt like they carried secrets. I would sit at my desk, pretending to take notes, but my hand would shake, not from fear, but from the unbearable awareness of his presence. One afternoon during literature, he asked me to read aloud. My voice wavered at first, but then I steadied because his eyes were on me. Only me. When I finished, he said, "Perfect." Exactly the emotion the author intended. The room filled with whispers, classmates glancing between us, but he didn't care, or maybe he didn't notice. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Do teachers notice their students this way? Do they think about them after class ends? Or is it just me imagining everything?" I wanted answers, but I was afraid of the answers too. The first real test came during after-school tutoring. I stayed behind to work on an essay, and as the classroom emptied, the noise faded, leaving only silence. He walked over, leaned on the edge of my desk, and asked softly, "Why do you always stay longer? Why do you push harder than the others?" I hesitated, then whispered, "Because it matters to me." He smiled, but not like a teacher smiles at a student. It was gentler, heavier, dangerous. "That's why you'll go far, because you care." Then came a pause so long it felt like the world held its breath. Until finally, footsteps echoed in the hall, another teacher passing by. And just like that, the spell broke. But the memory of that pause stayed with me, longer than any of his words. At home, I became distracted. Mom noticed first. "You're quiet these days, always in your head," she said one evening while folding laundry. I forced a smile. "Just schoolwork, that's all." But it wasn't, and I think she sensed it. Even my best friend, Claire, asked me about him. She nudged me at lunch and whispered, "Why does Mr. Carter always look at you like that?" I laughed too loudly, brushing it off. But inside, her words felt like a mirror reflecting the truth I tried to hide. The truth was growing too big to ignore. And then the church visit happened. It was a Saturday morning. The school choir had been invited to sing. I wasn't part of the choir, but I tagged along with Claire. To my surprise, Mr. Carter was there too, standing among the staff, his usual strictness softened by the calm of the place. After the service, I found myself near him, away from the crowd. He said quietly, "Strange, isn't it? How peace can feel heavier than noise." I nodded, not knowing what to say. Then he looked at me, really looked, and added, "You understand things most people your age don't." That sentence haunted me, not because it was wrong, but because it was exactly what I had been waiting to hear. Someone finally saw me, not as a child, not as a student, but as something more. From then on, every encounter felt sharper. Every word he said carried double meanings. Every pause between us was louder than the voices around. But cracks were showing too. One evening, while grading papers in class, he sighed and muttered, "Sometimes I wonder if I chose the right path." I asked, "What do you mean?" He gave a sad smile. Teaching is noble but lonely. His eyes locked onto mine, as if the loneliness had found its answer right in front of him. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet, but silence itself was an answer. At home that night, I lay awake, my heart pounding with questions I didn't dare ask. Is this real? Or is it just in my head? What if he feels the same? What if he doesn't? The uncertainty was torture, but it was also intoxicating. And then the moment that hinted at everything to come arrived. It was raining heavily after school, the kind of rain that blurred the world into gray shadows. Most students had gone home, but I stayed, waiting for the storm to ease. He found me in the hallway holding his umbrella. "You'll catch a cold if you wait like this," he said softly. Before I could answer, he opened the umbrella and held it over both of us. We walked side by side through the storm, so close that our shoulders brushed. And though not a single word was spoken, the silence between us screamed louder than thunder. When we reached the bus stop, he handed me the umbrella. "Keep it," he said. "I'll manage." I stared at him, speechless. Then he turned and walked into the rain without looking back. That was the moment, the undeniable moment, when I knew something forbidden had already begun. And whether I liked it or not, something was going to break. The umbrella sat in my room for days. Each time I looked at it, my chest tightened. It wasn't just fabric and metal, it was a secret, one I couldn't share with anyone. At school, I noticed how his eyes searched for me more often. During lessons, he'd ask me questions no one else could answer. During breaks, his gaze lingered too long. It was subtle, but I felt it, and I think others did too. It wasn't just an affair, it was my life he was playing with, my dignity, my soul. And I swore he would regret it. Because when love turns into betrayal, what's left is not weakness, but a strength born out of pain. And that strength was now mine. The morning after that night, I woke up with swollen eyes. But I pretended everything was normal. I smiled at him, made breakfast, poured his coffee. And he smiled back, as if nothing was wrong. That fake smile, it cut me deeper than a knife. Because now, I knew. I wasn't imagining it. He was hiding something, and he thought I was too blind to notice. Every detail began to haunt me. The way he dressed better before leaving the house. The sudden interest in wearing cologne, something he had stopped doing years ago. The excuses, extra classes, late meetings, helping a colleague. Colleague. That word now felt poisonous. At school, I began to notice the whispers. 2 teachers would look at me, then quickly look away. The janitor gave me a sympathetic glance one afternoon, as if he knew something I didn't. And the cruelest part was the silence. No one dared to tell me directly, but everyone seemed to know. I felt trapped, like the last person to see the truth in a story that everyone else had already read. One evening, I decided to test him. I asked, "Should we go out for dinner this weekend? Just you and me." His answer came too quickly. "I can't. I've already promised a colleague I'd help with grading." My heart sank, but I smiled anyway. "Of course," I said, pretending to understand. Inside, though, my anger boiled. I wanted to shout, to accuse him, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because something inside me whispered, if you confront him now, he'll deny it. He'll twist it. He'll make you look like the jealous wife. No, I needed proof. So I waited. And I began to plan. I started by checking his schedule carefully. Every time he said he was busy, I took note of the times, the dates, the places. And slowly, the puzzle began to form. One night, when he left saying he had to work late, I followed him. My hands shook on the steering wheel, my breath shallow. I prayed he would notice me. He drove across town, not to the school, but to a quiet restaurant. And there she was. The same woman from the teacher's lounge. Sitting across from him, smiling, touching his hand as if it belonged to her. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to look away. It was no longer suspicion. It was betrayal. I drove home in silence, every second replaying the scene, every smile, every touch. By the time I reached my room, my tears had dried. And something inside me had changed. The woman who once trusted blindly, she was gone. In her place was someone stronger, sharper. Someone who was ready to fight back. The chaos inside me was unbearable. One moment I wanted to forgive, to beg him to come back to me. The next, I wanted to burn everything he loved, to make him feel even a fraction of my pain. I walked around the house aimlessly, talking to myself. How could he do this to me? After everything I gave him? After all the sacrifices? My voice cracked, but then grew firm. No, he doesn't deserve my tears, he deserves my wrath. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the desk, writing in my diary. Not just words, but plans. Ideas of how to expose him, how to make him regret underestimating me. And as I wrote, a dangerous thrill filled my chest. It was the birth of something new, something dark, but empowering. Yes, the seed of revenge had been planted, and it was beginning to grow. The only question now was, how far would I be willing to go? The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my chest. I wasn't the same woman anymore. Every smile he gave me now looked fake. Every word he spoke sounded like a lie. But I didn't let him see my anger. No, I played the role of the perfect wife. Because the best revenge begins with patience. I cooked his breakfast, kissed his cheek, wished him luck at school. And he left thinking I was still blind. The moment the door shut, I opened my notebook. My secret weapon. Every page filled with dates, times, patterns of his lies. But I knew one thing clearly. It wasn't enough to know he was cheating. I needed to make him suffer. To feel the weight of betrayal as I did. So, I started small. I went through his things, his drawers, his phone when he was asleep. I found hidden messages, late-night calls, even photos. Each discovery stabbed me, but also fueled me. And then an idea struck. What if I exposed him, not just to me, but to everyone? The thought made my heart race. But it also scared me. Because what if someone found out it was me? What if my plan failed, and I became the villain? I closed my eyes, breathing heavily. Was I ready for this? Yes. I had no choice. That week, I began to build my trap. At the parent-teacher meeting, I watched him speak proudly in front of the crowd. His voice confident, his smile warm. The perfect teacher. The perfect husband. If only they knew the truth. And I thought, how delicious would it be to destroy this perfect image? I started collecting evidence. Screenshots of his messages. Photos of him with her. Even small details like receipts from the restaurant. Piece by piece, I was building a weapon. But with every step, the danger grew. One mistake, and he'd know I was watching him. One wrong move, and the other teachers would suspect me. Late at night, when he was asleep beside me, I whispered to myself, what if someone finds out it was me? What if they call me bitter, jealous, crazy? The fear was real, but the anger was stronger. One afternoon, I tried my first move. I accidentally left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter with one of her messages open. A playful message, heart emojis, her calling him my love. When he saw it, his face went pale. He quickly snatched the phone, stammering excuses. Oh, it's just a joke between colleagues, you know how teachers are. But I stayed calm. I looked him straight in the eyes and smiled. Of course, I said softly, but inside, I laughed, because now he knew that I knew. And that fear in his eyes was only the beginning. That night, he tossed and turned in bed, restless, anxious. And I lay beside him, wide awake, my heart steady. Yes, my first move had landed. The ripple had begun. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The tension in our house grew like a storm. He smiled less. He spoke carefully. And I could see it every time he looked at me, fear behind his eyes. I wanted more. Fear was only the appetizer. I craved the full meal, his downfall. So I began to test him. Little traps, little games. I told him I might visit his school one day just to surprise him. His hands trembled as he tied his tie. He laughed too loud, too quickly. No, you don't need to, it's boring there. But his panic was music to me. Next, I started to forget things. My earrings on the nightstand. A scarf near the door. Each one planted with purpose. Because when he met her, I wanted her to notice. To wonder if he was slipping. And soon, I saw the cracks. Her texts grew sharper. Why didn't you answer last night? Are you lying to me? Oh, yes, their love was rotting from the inside. But with every step, the danger grew. If he caught me snooping, he'd turn everything against me. If she suspected, she could ruin my name too. What if someone finds out it was me? I whispered to myself at night. The fear kept me awake. But then I remembered the image of them together, his lips on hers. And anger burned away the fear. One evening, I made my boldest move yet. While he showered, I slipped his phone into my bag. Heart racing, hands shaking, but steady enough to do what I had to. I forwarded every message, every photo, to my secret email. It took only minutes, but it felt like stealing fire. The shower turned off. My pulse thundered. I placed the phone back just in time. He walked out in his towel, smiling faintly, and I smiled back, hiding the evidence of war in my pocket. That night, as he slept soundly beside me, I opened my laptop. And there it was. His entire secret life, glowing on my screen. For hours, I studied it. Every word, every photo, every plan he made with her. And I thought, what if I printed all this? What if I placed it on every teacher's desk? What if his students saw the man behind the mask? The thought thrilled me. But it also chilled me. Because once I let the secret out, there was no return. The risk was enormous. If he suspected me, he could ruin me first. If the school found out, the shame might drown us both. Yet my heart whispered, do it. The next day, I made my first ripple. During dinner with friends, I dropped a single seed. I laughed casually. Sometimes I think he spends more time texting than teaching. Everyone chuckled. But I saw the shadow in his face, the way his fork paused, the way sweat beaded near his temple. Yes, he was cracking. And for the first time in weeks, I felt power again. Still, revenge was a knife that cut both ways. Sometimes late at night, I lay awake trembling, asking myself, am I becoming the villain in my own story? Or am I finally the hero? But I knew one truth. The first stone had been thrown. The water was rippling. And soon, the wave would rise. Because my revenge had only just begun. The night I chose my battlefield, it rained. Dark streets. Empty sky. A perfect stage for truth. He came home late again. Tie loose. Eyes avoiding mine. Long day? I asked. He nodded quickly. Meetings. Parents. You know. I leaned closer. Smiled faintly. Funny. You don't smell like chalk and papers. His eyes froze. Then he laughed too loudly. You're imagining things. No, I whispered. I'm remembering things. He blinked. What do you mean? I pulled my phone from my pocket. One tap. One photo. Her face glowing on the screen. Her smile, his arm around her waist. His mouth opened, but no words came. Say something, I whispered. Silence. Just silence. Finally, he stammered. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. Cold. Sharp. Short. Then explain the hundreds of messages, the late nights, the lies. His hands trembled. I made a mistake. A mistake doesn't last months, I snapped. A mistake doesn't kiss back. He swallowed. Eyes glossy. Voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you. I leaned forward. Close enough to see the fear in his pupils. But you did. The silence stretched. The storm outside rumbled. Finally, I placed a folder on the table. Thick. Heavy. Paper spilling from its edges. He frowned. What is that? Your life, I said coldly. Every text, every photo, every secret. Copied. Printed. Ready. He paled. You wouldn't. I would. I cut him off, and my voice didn't shake. He slammed his hand on the table. You'll destroy me. I leaned back. You destroyed us first. The room shook with silence, just the rain tapping on the windows. Then, I slid one page across to him. A single text. His words. Promises to her. Promises that once belonged to me. He stared at it, and something inside him broke. I love you, he whispered suddenly. I always loved you. Please don't do this. Tears pricked my eyes. For a moment, the old version of him flashed before me. The man I thought I married. But then, I remembered. His lips on her neck. His lies in my ears. No, I said firmly. You don't get to beg now. His fists clenched. His jaw tightened. And for the first time, he looked at me not with guilt, but with anger. You'll regret this, he spat. If you ruin me, you ruin yourself too. I stood slowly, walked toward the door, and without turning back, whispered, then let us both burn. I left him there, alone, drowning in the proof of his own betrayal. And outside, the storm raged louder, like applause, like warning, because this was only the beginning. The next morning, the air felt heavier, like even the sun knew what was about to happen. I walked into the hall. Parents, teachers, students, all gathered for the annual school meeting. He stood at the front, polished, smiling. The perfect teacher, the perfect man, the perfect lie. He spoke with charm, every word dripping with confidence. Education is trust, he said, and trust is the foundation of every relationship. My stomach churned. His voice no longer sounded like music. It was poison. I held the folder in my hand. Thick, heavy, like justice waiting to explode. 1 step forward. 2. Then I stopped at the microphone. Excuse me, I said. The room went quiet. Every eye turned. He froze. His smile faltered. What are you doing? He hissed under his breath. I didn't answer. I placed the folder on the podium, opened it slowly, and let the papers spill across the table. Gasps filled the room. Screenshots, photos, messages, all staring back at everyone. His face drained of color. Stop this, he whispered harshly. You're ruining everything. I looked at him. Cold, steady. You already did. Murmurs spread. Teachers whispered. Parents exchanged glances. Students giggled nervously. The head of the board leaned forward. What is this? Proof, I said clearly. Proof that the man you trust has betrayed every vow he ever made. He lunged toward me. Enough, he shouted. But it was too late. Everyone had already seen. The head frowned. Is this true? His lips trembled. Words failed him. And silence became his answer. The room erupted. Anger, disappointment, shock. His perfect image crumbled, piece by piece. You don't understand, he yelled desperately. I can explain. But no one listened. Not anymore. I turned to him, my voice sharp, cutting through the chaos. You taught trust. You broke it. You taught loyalty. You mocked it. You taught love. You sold it. His face twisted. Rage, humiliation, despair. All at once. You'll regret this, he spat again, but his voice cracked, weak, exposed. I gathered the remaining papers, held them high, and whispered just loud enough for the hall to hear. This is the man I married. Silence fell once more. Heavy, unforgiving. Then applause. Not for him. For me. For the truth. I stepped down, walked past him. His shoulders slumped, his reputation shattered. He whispered one last time as I passed. You think you've won? I stopped, met his eyes, and said softly, No. I think I survived. Then I walked away, out of the hall, out of his shadow, into the storm of consequences I had unleashed. The hall was behind me, but his footsteps followed. Heavy, desperate. Wait, he shouted. His voice echoed against the walls. I didn't stop. Outside, the wind bit my face. Cold, sharp, like the truth itself. He grabbed my arm, spun me around. His eyes were wild, red, broken. How could you do this to me? He demanded. His voice cracked. You ruined me. I yanked my arm free. No, I said calmly. You ruined yourself. He staggered back, like the words were sharper than any blade. You loved me once, he whispered. You promised forever. I stared at him. The man I once trusted. The man I once dreamed of growing old with. Now nothing but a stranger. I promised forever, I said coldly, to the man I thought you were, not the liar you became. His face twisted, between anger and sorrow. He looked older, weaker, smaller. Do you think they'll forgive you? He asked. You think this makes you a hero? You destroyed us both. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This wasn't about destroying you, I whispered. It was about saving me. The silence stretched. only the wind between us. Cold. Empty. Finally, he dropped his head. His shoulders shook. For the first time, he looked ashamed. "I loved you," he muttered. Barely audible. "I really did." I swallowed hard. The words cut deeper than any insult, because once I had believed them, but that love was gone, burned to ash. "You loved yourself," I replied softly, "and I was just the stage for your performance." His jaw clenched. He had no answer, because we both knew it was true. The parking lot was empty. The world had shrunk to just us two. One broken promise standing in front of another. I stepped closer, close enough to see the cracks in his mask, the sweat, the trembling. "You wanted to teach me a lesson?" I said. "Here's mine. Even the strongest lies eventually collapse under their own weight." His lips trembled, but no words came. Only silence. I turned to leave, my heart pounding. Every step felt like walking away from a battlefield. "Wait," he cried again. But this time it wasn't anger. It was fear. I glanced back one last time. He stood there alone. His world crumbled. His pride shattered. His eyes hollow. And in that moment, I realized something. The revenge was complete. Not because I ruined him, but because he had ruined himself and finally knew it. I didn't need more words. Didn't need to watch him fall further. The silence between us said everything. So I walked away. Through the doors. Into the night. Into freedom. My footsteps echoed on the pavement. Steady. Strong. For the first time in months, my heart wasn't drowning. It was breathing. Behind me, he was nothing but a shadow. A shadow I would never follow again. The night air wrapped around me. Silent. But inside, my chest was burning. I had walked away. Left him standing in the ruins of his own lies. Yet even as freedom touched my skin, the weight of it all clung to me. Revenge had been my fire. My purpose. The reason I woke up every day when despair tried to drown me. And now the fire was gone. I thought I would feel light. I thought I would feel unshackled. But instead there was emptiness. The kind that creeps in when silence becomes louder than screams. At home, I looked in the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was different. Older. Tired. Stronger. I touched my own face. Traced the faint lines grief had carved into me. Scars no one else could see. I whispered to myself, "You survived." But survival is not the same as peace. The days that followed blurred together. People whispered. Some pitied me. Some judged me. Others praised me for exposing the truth. But none of them knew what it really felt like. None of them knew the cost. At night, when the world was quiet, I replayed everything. His betrayal. My rage. The moment I saw his mask break. The hollow look in his eyes as I walked away. Did I win? Or did I just destroy the both of us? Revenge gave me justice. But it also carved a hollow space inside me. Some nights, I missed the girl I was before all of this. The girl who believed in forever. The girl who thought love was unbreakable. That girl was gone. And in her place stood someone colder, sharper, but also wiser. One morning, I walked through the park. Watched children laugh. Their innocence felt like a language I once spoke but forgot. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, listened to the sound of life moving on, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I had been too afraid to face. What now? The answer didn't come easily, but slowly it began to form. Revenge was not the end of my story. It was the turning point. Because the truth was, I didn't want to be defined by him, or by what he did to me, or even by the revenge I took. I wanted more. I wanted to laugh again without bitterness. I wanted to love again without fear. I wanted to live for myself, not in reaction to someone else's betrayal. It would take time. It would take healing. But I could feel the possibilities stirring inside me, like a small flame refusing to die. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I lit a candle by the window. Not for him. Not for us. But for me. A reminder that light could still exist after darkness. I whispered, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And for the first time since the betrayal, I believed it. Revenge had given me closure, but forgiveness of myself, not him, would give me peace. So I chose to step forward. Not as the broken woman he left behind. Not as the avenger who exposed him. But as someone new. Someone free. And as the candle flickered in the night, I realized something powerful. Sometimes revenge satisfies. Sometimes it scars. But in the end, it's what you build afterward that truly defines you. If this story touched you in any way, take a moment to reflect on how betrayal and healing shape our lives. Everyone carries scars, but what we choose to build afterward truly defines us. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a moment that changed you forever? Share your reflections in the comments. Your voice may help someone else feel less alone. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and stay connected.